Hello everyone. As of the recording of this video, I had finished recording my season reviews of Big Brother Canada, and of course now it's time for me to talk about Big Brother US. Since I know the format of how I want to discuss these seasons, and BBUS is just simply more iconic. I have most definitely rewatched Big Brother 2 a few times since I first watched it, and I learn something new every single time, and I always get heavily invested in the world that is created by the dynamics of these 12 people, and it is no different this time. I've come to respect a lot of them more now as players than I did, and I really feel how raw this season is and how really unforeseen the circumstance is of 12 people being put in a house, 12 people from all walks of life. The all walks of life thing is something that Big Brother US kind of forgets relatively soon in their history, but you can really tell that these people are really different. And they have to deal with the fact that they are playing a game that requires being cutthroat in a society and a reality TV landscape where being honorable, dutiful, and courageous is very encouraged. This is only a year after Survivor Borneo, and even Survivor took a few years for people to get out of that mindset and to embrace being a cutthroat show. But with Big Brother, the seasons are usually twice as long as the Survivor season, so you really see the struggle that these Huskies go through. And with the lower production value and the 2000s-esque, 90s-esque music, it's really vintage and it's really a time capsule. The season starts off with a blindside, which you wouldn't expect to happen, but it just really showed how much this cast was playing the game, and you really understand everyone as complex beings and not carefully curated archetypes. So, Hardy mentions life being an adventure, Quister calls herself a drama queen, Will mentions something about being a balance of confidence and cockiness, Shannon mentions being an athlete, Kent talks about how opinionated he is, Monica mentions how she is Brooklyn, Bunky calls himself creative, complex, and crazy, Autumn tries to be sexy, and Cheryl talks about how unforgettable she is. Nicole mentions that people will either love or hate her, Mike talks about how much of a ladies' man he is, and Justin just mentions how now we know his name. Nicole makes a bad first impression on people, Bunky mentions that he's going to hide that he is gay, Heidi makes a very good first impression on people, Bunky mentions that Monica and Nicole are alike as they are both loud, opinionated, not here to play the game, which is a poor read, and thinking that they're still in the audition process. People think Cheryl is hot, and Justin makes a poor impression. People automatically pick up that Will is playing the game. Nicole tries to make a bargain during the deal that whomever is the last person in the car will be the first person voted out, which cost a lot of people to leave the car, but it also cost people to get even more annoyed with Nicole. Everyone but Cheryl, Autumn, and Kent left the car immediately, and it ended up being Kent and Autumn in the final two, and she wants it because she's a single mother without a car, but he doesn't care and ends up winning it. Neither one of them really looked good in the scenario, but apparently a lot of people threw out his name as their target due to this event. People start to pick up that Bunky is gay since there was a conversation about how there should be a gay person in the house. Kent goes on his homophobic conversation about Bunky, or to Bunky, and it's so ironic with what happens later on in the season. Kent tells Bunky that he and Justin will never nominate or evict one another, and also mentions that the same thing can be applied to Bunky. Kent tries to form a final four with Justin and other people. Autumn tries to hook up with Hardy because she mentions that he doesn't know how beautiful he is, and he mentions how she has a lot of insecurity issues that she needs to work with, and that she doesn't love herself. So essentially, he curbed Autumn. Will was hoping that there would be a bunch of guys that he wants to manipulate, but he mentions that he generally wants to hang out with most of them. Shannon bonds with the guys and mentions that other girls tend to be threatened by her, so she gives off one of those girls vibes. She mentions that she is close to Will, Mike, and Hardy, which is so LOL at that last name. The first HOH is based on popularity and first impressions, and it shows that Will and Nicole were not doing very well in this element, and it has Cheryl and Mike at the end, but Mike ends up winning the first HOH. Kent talks about how the women are some serious competitors and are looking up to get out the guys, which isn't really the case, and mentions that he and Justin are working together. Kent mentions that the two of them can work with Bucky, Will, and Bunky to align, and after 2 HOHs, they should have the numbers. Kent mentions that he came in the game planning on making an alliance with 3 other people, though Mike mentions that he will bring Kent along as far as he can, but he isn't interested in an alliance. Bunky comes out to Autumn, and it's a pretty nice, sincere moment between the two of them, where she gives him some encouragement, and that people shouldn't judge him due to his sexuality. Will, Kent, and Bunky speculate about Bunky being gay, and Bunky talks to Nicole about the 4 guys forming some sort of alliance together, which includes Kent, Justin, Will, and Mike. Mike talks about how much he wants to nominate Nicole, and the house talks about how much of an abrasive control freak Nicole is, though you have people like Autumn stating that she likes her. Nicole can sense how people are avoiding her. We are seeing Nicole change some people's perception of her, even slightly Mike and Will, and we see the start of Nicole and Hardy bonding with one another as Nicole realized her mistakes socially in the beginning. Nicole and Mike have a conversation about them pretending to not play the game, but they agree that Hardy is. This is very interesting that Nicole knew about this already, and it might have been why she wanted to work with him. Interesting, indeed. Mike mentions that some people are doing this since they aren't like, and it seems like he is referring to Kent in this scenario, and Mike overhears Bunky and Monica talk about Kent targeting him because he is gay. We even have more confirmation that Mike was talking about Kent, because he talks about wanting to nominate Kent because he is irritating, and Kent needs to try to make people like him, and Mike hates even more about Hardy's body, mentioning that he is expendable. We see the start of Will and Shannon's romance, and they try to make it look like it's strategy or not, or they make it debatable. Autumn talks to Mike about Justin trying to get with her, and Mike is annoyed with her, since he mentions that Autumn is trying to get with guys, but a lot of the house guests see her as a weak, insecure woman who needs to get herself together. People talk about how much they love Cheryl, and how she's killing it with the social game. Mike nominates Nicole and Cheryl for eviction. Mike makes it clear that Nicole is the target, and Kent mentions that Cheryl is the bigger threat, where Mike probably is making a mistake. Nicole feels bad after being nominated, though knew that she was going to be nominated, since Mike would not look at her, but she mentions that she's going to have one-on-one conversations with people. We see that she has a nice talk with Hardy, where he gives her good advice, and she mentions that she just wants to be his friend. Cheryl says that most of the house guests told her that she is safe, but she feels empty about it. Nicole talks to Bunky and a few of the others that they need to keep her, so they can all go after Chilltown, which includes Justin, but especially Will. Everyone talks about how hot and likable Cheryl is, and people mention that she's a pawn, but we see Kent and Bunky mention that Cheryl is the bigger threat. Will talks about hoping that people underestimate his ability to cause mass destruction, which definitely happens, and Bunky mentions that he wants Will out, so he's hoping that Will pisses off enough people. Several other people mention that Will is controlling the environment and is the leader of that side. Will decides to host a fast in the house where he wants to see who is strong and weak, but Nicole and the others see right through it. We see more showmance, Will and Shannon content, where things are clearly building up and they end up cuddling in the sheets. Autumn ended up eating after 30 minutes, where Will, Shannon, and Justin lasted the longest. Bunky ends up coming out to Kent, which he dreaded, and Kent is confused, since he said that Bunky says that he is straight, and Bunky mentions that he never actually said that he had a wife. The conversation ends up going a lot better than expected, since Bunky talks about his experience, and Kent gives him props for his courage. Nicole sees that she is getting support by people like Autumn and Kent, so she decides to kick up the campaign, though Monica is insistent on voting out Nicole, which is a very consistent thing with Monica throughout the season. Krista mentions that she believes Nicole has a chance to stay in the house, and she will vote for Nicole to stay, but she's going to pretend with the cool kids, but will target Will if she wins HOH, which aged very well. Nicole and Justin speak, and he mentions that Cheryl is funnier than a $2 bill, which is an interesting read on Justin, and I don't know if anyone else saw Cheryl like this. Justin starts pissing off a lot of people as he starts threatening Bunky for lightly slapping his head, and he gets into an argument with Kent after he stole Kent's pillow more than once, and it was the second time he did it. Kent is humiliated by this and is annoyed because Justin will apologize in private, but he believes public actions deserve public apologies, essentially. Buggy tries to campaign to Autumn. Apparently, there is more to this that we will definitely get into, and mentions that Krista, Will, and Justin will vote Nicole out, though Nicole mentions in the diary room that she has Autumn and Bunky on her side, and Hardy told her that she isn't out yet. During this entire time, Cheryl mentions that it could be her that goes home, and it's interesting that she had this gut feeling that things weren't smooth sailing for her, which I definitely appreciate. It is revealed that Justin was expelled a bit over 24 hours before the eviction, where he threatens to punch Autumn in the stomach. We see him threaten Kent in an argument, and we see him getting warned, and he gives an insincere apology. A few people mention that they are scared, and Hardy mentions that he will beat him up if need be, to protect the other house guests. Justin threatens to throw a wine bottle on the basketball court, and he was warned about not sexually forcing himself on someone, which is just awful. The final straw was him kissing Krista, and it ended up with him threatening to kill Krista and putting the knife to her neck. Judy mentions that Krista told him to put it on her neck. He ends up getting expelled after this, and we learn that he broke a chess set and threw it, as well as peed on the walls. Justin is most definitely an unpleasant person in the house, and it says a lot that he was cast on the show, especially with how the vetting process works, since it was known that he had criminal activity and for some heinous crimes as well. He was clearly aligned with the Chilltown side of the house, and what's interesting is that a lot of the house guests blamed them for Justin's behavior and kind of goading him into making bad decisions, where they felt like Justin was fine enough on his own. If he stayed, I do think the season would have been different, and there's a chance that Nicole goes home, since it would have been a 5-5 vote, or the votes would have been 4-4 and Mike would have broken the tie. But ultimately, he couldn't even keep himself together enough to make it through the vote and was pulled due to his own actions, so We see Autumn and Shannon go back and forth in an argument about cigarettes, which we'll get more into soon, but the two sides are formed where it's Mike, Shannon, Will, and we see Justin in some of these shots as well. The two sides start bashing one another, and both of the nominees want to nominate Will and Shannon. We're going to unpin what I mentioned earlier, where Mike and Autumn were in the bed and he tried to get her to vote out Nicole, and she was not interested in this. They end up arguing in the bed about his intentions, and he accuses her of being the aggressor. They end up arguing outside about what allegedly happened. They tell the other to stop defaming one another, and Mike mentions that she feels unpretty because no one wants her, and there are no other black people in the house. Where Autumn feels like he tried to seduce her to get her to vote his way in the house, and she found that to be a disgusting strategy. Shannon put a potato chip bag on Autumn's bed, and Autumn told people about her eating disorder. After Autumn asked her about what to do about her eating, Nicole, Krista, and Hardy cheer up Autumn, and Krista tells her that she needs to not let them get to her, which shows Krista's eventual intentions and how it would end Autumn's game. It leads to another argument with Mike and Shannon arguing against Autumn, Hardy, and Kent about the event, and Autumn was apparently worried about being next, which kind of happened. Krista thinks that Autumn is jealous of Shannon, which very interesting read on Krista's part, and I wish they delved more into this element. And Shannon feeds on it, or she claims that Shannon feeds on Autumn's jealousy of her. I don't even know how I can interpret this. Shannon ends up playing the victim in the argument about her putting potato chips on her bed, and we'd see Shannon do this a few times throughout the season. We see Nicole and Mike have a confrontation about how he pillaged her, how he is in an alliance with Will and Shannon, and how they never took the time to get to know her in general. Mike brags about his position in the house and how his relationship with Cheryl has strengthened, though we see Cheryl incessantly bash Mike and wants to go after him. Shannon mentions that Mike's plan is backfiring, and Mike thinks it's going to be a tie vote, where he will vote Nicole out. Cheryl is evicted in a 5-4 vote. It was definitely a good thing that Cheryl ended up leaving first, since we learned that she had a cancer tumor and she had to handle the situation. She was definitely great socially, and that will probably do her well on a lot of seasons, but at the same time, a lot of people saw this from very early on. And she definitely had a nice presence to the season, though I don't know how much she would have offered had she lasted longer. Overall, definitely fine with her being the first boot in general, especially with what ended up happening later on in the season and her health, so everything kind of just worked out. Week 2 is arguably the most boring week of the entire season, and it says a lot when the first episode of the week included a lot of the action that happened on the first week to make up for this relatively dull week. So Chilton are very shocked about the vote, Top are celebrating, and they question Kent for his vote, or about his vote. People are speculating about who the third vote is, though Chilton thinks Krista voted with him, but it was actually Monica. Krista ends up winning HOH, and what Will mentions is that he disappointed Mike and Shannon, which seems clear to me that he did not intentionally throw this competition. Nicole pitches to Krista about taking Will out, and that she will be fine going home after Chilton goes. Krista is trying to hear everyone out, especially since there's so much tension, and she wants to keep her neutral spot, which is ideal for her. Monica mentions that she should nominate Will and Shannon mentions that she should nominate Hardy, who is too back and forth on situations, and Monica, who she can't read, and was a dumb move for Shannon to suggest this to Krista, who's very close to Monica, and Hardy at this point. Bunky and Adam say that she should nominate Will and Shannon, where it becomes clear that everyone wants Will out. Will tells Nicole that there are people that he hates a lot more than her now, and she doesn't take that well, especially since he has barely taken the time to get to know her. Shannon tries to make some sort of amends with Hardy as well, since she feels like he has an issue with her. Both Nicole and Hardy see that Chilton is trying to change their strategy since the blindside woke them up about their poor social position and strategic position. Bunky even says the apology to her as well, and Bunky is annoyed with how phony Shannon is. Krista brings Monica to her HOH room as a sounding board, since Monica is her most important person. She tells Monica that most of the house mentioned Will and Shannon, and some people mentioned Hardy, so she's thinking about nominating either one from each side, so Will and Hardy together, or the strong in Hardy against the weak in Autumn, which Monica does not approve of, since Krista will be booted next. Top, mainly Hardy, assumes that one person from their alliance and one person from Chilton will be nominated, and Nicole tells them that they need to prepare that someone who isn't from Chilton will be nominated, and that Chilton will be completely safe. Which is interesting that she caught on to this already. Nicole mentions that Krista is trying to play the middle, which is smart for her, where Boogie and Shannon are worried about being nominated since they are bigger threats than Will. Krista ends up nominating Kent and Autumn for eviction. Kent knew that he was going to be nominated since he knew that Krista was going to be in the middle, and Autumn agrees that she has become a lot more emotional and bitter while being in the house, which was Krista's justification for nominating her. Chilton is thrilled that they were spared this week, and Krista does not see Will as a threat since no one will vote for him at the end. Apparently, she always planned on nominating Kent, but Autumn is not an emotionally stable person, and she would be better off mentally not being in the house. Clearly, Krista's sentiment is something others agree with, as Hardy asks Autumn if she can last another week in the house, or stay in the house in general, since he isn't sure that she can. He mentions in the diary room that the group having to constantly cuddle and lift her up emotionally is taking away from them needing to lift themselves up emotionally, though he and Bunky are thinking about giving her petty votes. We get a Hardy segment where the woman lusts over him, and people initially thinking that he's a very vain person, but he's a grounded, sincere man. We have Will talk about how Hardy is obsessed with things being seen as puppies and roses, and he doesn't like what Will represents, which is honesty and realisticness, and thinks Hardy is going to use the quote-unquote nice guy guard to make it to the end, which is working, and Will is right on the money regarding Hardy's strategy. We see the start of him telling people that he wants to see Chilton go, and then he'll ask to be nominated where he leaves, which I can't believe people bought that crap from Hardy. We get a Shannon segment where Mike mentions that he considers her to be an ice princess. Shannon claims that her people don't try to do mean things, though we see Chilton talk about locking Autumn in the storage room. Bunky calls her a strong and arrogant woman who only cares about winning and is very cutthroat, where Kent mentions that she is passive-aggressive and self-centered. Hardy calls her a victimizing, fake person. Monica calls Shannon a slick ass who is direct, but also thinks Shannon is insincere. Will realizes that Nicole is running the house, and he tries to do damage control with her, where he mentions that he would be very happy with her winning over Bunky, since she kicks ass, and she tells him that he is a good manipulator. He promises to her that he will never nominate her if he were to ever win HOH. Autumn wants Kent to concede, and Nicole talks to Kent about how she would want the two nominees to get together to see which one should leave, and so they can tell Top who to vote out, but he refuses to give up or to go home unless the majority of the House themselves decide to vote him out, which good on Kent for that. We see Mike and Krista go on some date, and it's the start of their showmance. People talk about how Monica is very under the radar. Krista talks about Monica being one of the coolest people she has ever met, and Monica likes encouraging people, as well as giving people wisdom, which a lot of people like about her. Monica is a motivator in her real life, so she's doing in the house what she does in her job. Hardy mentions that Monica wants to win, and can see her doing that, and even Mike shares the same sentiment about Monica. Nicole tells Kent and the others in Top that she's going to infiltrate Chilltown so she can destroy it from top to bottom, and she will feed them information. As Chilltown now thinks they have her and Krista, Mike is very bitter at Kent because he feels like he saved Kent from eviction in the first week, and Kent is confused about Mark and Adam speaking now, despite their blowout a week ago, and Bunky and Will speaking now, when Will caught him the F-A you-know-what word a week prior. We learn that Chilltown really wants Kent out, as they bash Kent for being a worse person than they anticipated, since at least Autumn can keep her mouth shut. Hardy and Nicole is making it known to Autumn that they are voting her out, and we see the start of a bit more of a negative side of Hardy with how he is dealing with Autumn, and we see Nicole play double agent, since she knows that Chilltown wants her vote. In general, Autumn seems resigned to leaving, so the house talks about Will and Shannon, as some people think they are very insincere, while others think it is a genuine connection, while thinking it is odd, since Shannon has a boyfriend. Krista mentions in her HOH talk with Julie that she has an alliance called the Untouchables with Hardy and Monica. Autumn is evicted in a unanimous 7-0 vote and throws Hardy under the bus for pretending to be her friend because he mentioned that she needed to be home with her 4-year-old son. Autumn was clearly not meant for this game, but I did feel really bad for how she was treated in the house, and I don't think she deserved it. She definitely had a lot of insecurity issues, and it's clear that strategy just wasn't really there for her, and it was just the wrong house and wrong show for her to be on. As a player, she might be the worst player of the season, or one of them for sure, as there really isn't much to talk about game-wise. Week 3 is easily one of the best weeks of the season, and might be the best week of the season, as it has so many iconic moments, and it's really where Big Brother really started being put on the map in regards to pop culture, and even still, after 22 years, it is still one of the more memorable, talked about moments in the show's history. So Hardy knows that Autumn's speech about a fake friend was about him, and he was shocked, since he defended her more than once, and believes that Nicole was the person planting negative seeds about him to Autumn, so he, at least for this brief moment, distrusts Nicole. Chilltown thinks Nicole is acting away, since her swing vote was a missed opportunity to take out Kent, as well as to gain Autumn's jury vote. And others, like Kent, Monica, and Crystal, think that it's shady that she didn't give her friend a vote to stay. Hardy ends up winning HOH. Town knows that they're screwed, especially Shannon, because she was second in the competition. Shannon talks about people being jealous about fun, attractive, intelligent, vain, and people who have power, and they know Shannon will be one of the nominees, but the other one is iffy. Hardy is a bit annoyed that people think that he is vain and not intelligent, and Will thinks that the HOH comp was stupid, since it was about the other house guests, because he doesn't talk to them, and it just shows his poor social game at this point. We get more context about Will and Shannon wanting to be together after the season, and Shannon cries about the dilemma of her boyfriend, though she knows that he is not the one. Hardy gets annoyed with Bunky because Bunky wants to throw the have-not competition to the woman, since they were on Slap last week, and it's the start of the many stupid arguments that they will have throughout the season, but Hardy mentions Bunky's passive aggressiveness in general. Bunky and Kent's friendship is delved into by the cast, where they end up sleeping in the same room together, joke around, and really feel protected by one another. Bunky even makes a few gay jokes at Kent, which he appreciates being treated like a human. We learn more about the unintelligible alliance between Monica, Hardy, and Krista, where they all sincerely trust one another and enjoy one another's company. Krista throws Nicole under the bus, and Hardy mentions that he's still annoyed about Nicole, claiming he campaigned for votes to get Autumn out. Several of the house guests, mainly Hardy and Bunky, shade the hell out of Shannon, calling her fake and not knowing social cues. She hates smoking, but decides to try it, and the others think that it is fake, and she's doing a poor job of integrating herself. Shannon has a slight cry-fest meltdown about everyone hating her in the house and not having any positive qualities, which she had to realize about herself and is struggling with constructive criticism. Hardy asks Mike to speak to him, and he approaches Mike with a deal, where he tells Mike that he won't nominate him if Mike won't nominate him if he wins HOH. Mike rejects the deal, and he doesn't even lie about it, which is a really awful move for Mike, and we see Hardy pick up on the game by making many side deals, which would be important for Hardy's game later on. He offers to be nominated beside Bunky to keep Will and Shannon safe, and Mike ends up telling Will and Shannon about it, and we have a quick conversation where Kent and Bunky talk about Hardy thinking with a slower head and can be easily influenced by Krista. Hardy ends up nominating Will and Shannon for eviction, and she accuses him of being a coward for the nominations. Hardy mentions that he wanted to win, but seeing people do anything to win, i.e. Chilltown, made his stomach turn, but it's also ironic due to what will happen to him in the future, and Chilltown claims that Hardy is a marked man. The showmans are really sad, and there's mention of both of them leaving, and Will mentions that he's considering leaving, but Shannon tells him that they will not walk out cowardly like him, and it seems like she's going to sacrifice herself. Shannon accuses Hardy of being jealous and a coward, since he can't have her, and we see them arguing about him supposedly being jealous of her and Will's relationship. He mentions that why is nominating them a cowardly move, and Shannon doesn't explain it well at all. We learn that Hardy was hoping that Mike would take the deal, since it would look like Mike sold Shannon and Will out to be safe. We have more bashing of Chilltown, and Hardy claims that he doesn't want to win, and we have Will mention that his sole goal is to get Hardy out of the house. Mike tells Will to chill, and that Shannon will piss people off enough to send her home. We have more bashing of Hardy being a dummy, and Mike calling Bunky a girl, which... why? We see Nicole and Shannon bond over the latter training her, and it's a positive moment that contrasts with what we're about to see of Shannon. Shannon walks past Hardy laughing at himself in the washroom while he's brushing his teeth, and she bitches about it to Chilltown, so she decides to take his toothbrush to clean the toilet. The diary room tells her to replace his toothbrush, and she was lectured about it. She tells Hardy that his toothbrush broke and gives a bunch of bad excuses, especially when she wasn't reaching for the curling iron, since her hair was up and not curled. After knowing that she didn't accidentally break his toothbrush, Krista tells him the truth, and it causes another argument between Hardy and Shannon, and she claims that she won't tell him the truth, since he won't tell the truth about why he nominated Will and Shannon. Hardy is not handling it well, and Krista had to cheer him up, and Will thinks he's overreacting, since Hardy is such a crybaby vain pretty boy, though Will just had a segment about him waxing for no reason. We get some more development on the underlying feud between Kent and Krista, which has been building up. Kent told Krista that she's going to be a target for both sides, especially after her HOH, and she doesn't handle it well. Bunky and Kent talk about how Krista is not a part of Top anymore. Bunky tells Hardy about why it's ridiculous that no one is mad at Krista for not nominating Chilltown last week. We have some more passive aggression at a dinner where Shannon argues and snips at Kent, and we see the house meeting where Hardy and Shannon argue about the toothbrush incident again, where she does not tell the event of what happened, and even Kent catches some strays once he intervenes in the conversation. Hardy thinks that Shannon threatened him outside of the house, and things get more heated. Hardy ends up crying after the meeting, which is one of the many meltdowns he will have throughout the season, and Nicole has to cheer him up, where she mentions that it isn't guaranteed that Shannon will go and Will stays. Shannon does not want it to be a tie vote, since she does not want Hardy to have the tiebreaker vote and the satisfaction of that. We do see some consideration and back and forth from Top about maybe voting out Will. Hardy wants to have the last vote and suggests the idea to Monica that she, Bunky, and Kent vote Will out. We have to see Will and Shannon go on their first real date, and they have high hopes for the relationship outside of the show, and we all know how that went. We get some focus on Krista and how she has a spell on people. They mentioned Hardy having an attraction for Krista, but he likes her personality more. We have Mike talk about his attraction to Krista, though we see bits of their romance here and there, and Kent talks about how he sees through her using her sexuality for her gain. Hardy mentioned in his HOH talk that he is equally the closest to Krista and Nicole, which is interesting since he lost trust with Nicole early on in the week, and this won't last very long with him and Krista. Shannon is evicted in a unanimous 6-0 vote. As a player, I don't really know what to think of Shannon. While she had some sort of awareness that they were going to be blindsided on Mike's HOH, she really just played very personally. She talked about how much better she and the others were, and while she was close to winning the HOH that sent her home, she essentially gave up when she was on the block and when Hardy won, and I don't even think she was going to be the initial target. In general, she's just very emotional and couldn't socially connect, but she definitely brought some good moments to the season and had her entertaining moments that are iconic. Week 4 is one of the calmer weeks of the season, which says a lot since it isn't a calm week at all. But you definitely start to see the end of the Chilton era and the end of the top era where the tide starts to turn and some of the major dynamics of the season starts to form here. Will and shockingly Hardy does not take Shannon's eviction well, since Will feels like he was a coward with not saying anything, and Hardy is crying because he didn't want to personally attack her, but it was just a game and no one should let it get to them. Everyone makes fun of Mike's answer in the HOH competition about groceries and the amounts you spend on groceries, and Kent wins the HOH competition. Mike feels like crap since he was close in the last 2 HOH competitions, but just missed out. Kent's HOH-itis immediately starts, and we see a montage of everyone being hugely annoyed by Kent in general. Kent asks Hardy who he should nominate, and suggests to Monica that he can nominate Mike and Hardy together, though Kent mentions to Nicole that he can nominate Bunky and Mike. He is clearly all over the place, but is insistent on nominating Mike, who's complaining about the popularity contest happening, but Mike thinks Will is on his way out, where he will be nominated with Mike or with Krista. Mike promises that Shannon versus Hardy will be nothing compared to how he will be and how he will react if Kent nominates him this week. We have the group, especially Krista and Monica, joke about their increasing sex drive and their need for raunchy sex, and it's interesting and crazy that this is shown as a normal conversation here, but it will never even be aired nowadays on Modern Big Brother. We get some showmance focus between Mike and Krista. Will makes a deal with Kent to not nominate him, and Krista overhears the conversation, mentioning Shannon, which she tells Mike about. Mike is shocked about him being a potential target because he saved Kent, where he would have went home in the first week, and saved Kent from going home in week 2 as well, with his vote. Kent does not want to nominate 2 Chilltown people, and Monkey might be nominated beside Mike, who he doesn't feel like he owes Mike anything, because Mike did not nominate him and rejected. Kent tells Will that people mentioned that he is a different person without Shannon, and mentions he won't nominate him, but the other nominee, who isn't Chilltown, is someone who he has an axe to grind with. Will does not intend to keep his word to Kent, since he plans on nominating Kent and Hardy if he were to win HOH, which is just even more proof that Will didn't intentionally throw competitions in the beginning of the season. Kent nominates Mike and Krista for eviction, and Mike ends up arguing with Kent, because he mentions that Kent promised on his kids to never nominate Mike, who saved his ass the first week, and he would have went home because he threw an unwed mother out of a car. Mike calls them out for being hypocrites, since they're playing just as dirty as Chilltown is. Mike continues to lash out at the nomination ceremony as he tells Hardy that the others are pretending that they aren't aligned, and Hardy admits that they were aligned and are aligned, and Mike mentions that Kent was not as transparent as Hardy is being. Krista is annoyed at his speech, mentioning that she's not trustworthy, but no one else agrees with him, according to her, but Kent and Nicole mentions that she takes information and spills it to everyone, which Krista definitely does. Hardy has a meltdown where he goes on and on about how he does not want to talk about nominations and stuff, and Nicole interprets it as Hardy leaving all of his allegiances, though we see this shit doesn't last long, which is so typical for Hardy. Bucky mentions that Hardy is playing the game and is trying to be duplicitous, but doesn't want to show his cards, which is a great read on Bucky's part. Bunky tells Kent about what happens, and Kent mentions that if Hardy deviates from the group, he will be nominated did if he's against a top member. Kent, Hardy, and Nicole notices the difference in Will since Shannon has been gone, as he is quieter and cleans around the house more. Bunky and Nicole talks about how they are lusting for zucchini, though zucchini is really code for Hardy, and then Nicole game talks with Will about the latter wanting to save Mike while she is shaving his leg. The house is playing a Ouija board game, and I believe it is here where Will decides that he doesn't want to win anything. Will proposes an alliance with him, Mike, and Nicole, but Mike doesn't want to accept anything since he doesn't want to do that to Krista. During the Monday meeting, Nicole rants about being the only one that cleans up, and it causes for a small disagreement with Hardy and Nicole, who mention that Nicole likes to hold it over their heads and makes them feel inferior. Sorry, Monica says this to Nicole, and Hardy essentially cosigns. Nicole wants Monica gone after this, and the feud continues from this point onwards through the rest of the season. We continue to see the disintegration of Hardy and Kent's relationship, where Kent brings up Hardy stating that he doesn't want to talk game anymore or to be a part of Top, and Hardy mentions that if they have 2 to 3 more weeks until it's just Top, why should there be any more game talk? Mike and Kent continue arguing as the week goes on, as Mike is tired of Kent's nappy ass, which yikes at that wording, and how he's a poor example to his kids. Will is annoyed because Mike is not allowing him to keep him in the house, and Krista is unbeknownst to Will blatantly campaigning against her. Top is crumbling as Kent tells Bunky and Hardy that they need to be the final 3. Hardy tells Nicole this, Nicole tells Kent this, who mentioned that it was Hardy who approached him, though the edit shows otherwise, and Hardy is annoyed because Kent won't tell him anything anymore, where Nicole reminds him that Kent was done with him anyways. Kent and Hardy start arguing, but this is edited very weirdly, since this happened the same time Kent and Mike were fighting a few minutes ago on the show, but it was shown out of sequence. Hardy and Will end up making a deal, and he tells Hardy and Nicole that they could keep Mike. We would see the start of what would shape the second half of the season here. Kent knows that he is not liked in the house and mentions to Bunky that Krista and Hardy cannot be trusted. We get a segment about Hardy and Will's increasing relationship while Will mentions that he does plan to get revenge, but can't do it immediately or he will be evicted. Hardy mentions that he has higher morals in the fact that he isn't overtly mean, but they both have an understanding with one another. They talk about how they bond over being pretty boys, and Bunky finds it odd that they're getting close now. Mike is evicted in a 4-1 vote. I knew that Mike didn't play a good game this season, but this rewatch, this has me even lower on how he played Big Brother 2. It seemed like he had the idea of how the game should be played, but actualizing it is something very different. And his personality just rubbing people the wrong way and his arrogance caused almost everything he wanted to do to backfire. And once he was blindsided, he kind of just gave up in the game, and he essentially gave up like Shannon did the week prior, where he didn't campaign, he didn't even want Will to campaign for him, and he didn't even lie about the deal that Hardy gave him, where he could have said yes to Hardy, but then backed out on it. Seeing the contrast between here and what we would eventually see in All Stars is very interesting. Mike wasn't a likable presence, and he wasn't really that complex, but he definitely brought a lot to the show, and I forgot how good he was in all the competitions he competed in pertaining to HOH. Week 5 is definitely the pivotal and inciting week of the season, in my opinion. Chilltown is officially done, as it's only Will left, and what we know as the Top Alliance is over, as Nicole and Hardy finally turn on their alliance, and even Krista is ready to make her own moves and play her own game. And we see Will, Hardy, and Nicole get together, and they would essentially run the second half of the season together. And it's here where you really start to notice that people's morals go out the window, and the mental health of many of these house guests are really out the door by this point, and is severely declining. But it makes for riveting television. Krista is not handling the departure of Mike well, and some of the others mention that the energy will subside now that he is gone. Hardy ends up winning HOH once again, and talks to Nicole about how paranoid Punky has become, and they're tired of how weak and kiss-assy he is. Hardy mentions that he likes Will and has something planned that will make America's jaw drop, and Nicole mentions that he better not screw her over, or she will drop his jaw. Bunky asks Kisses to Hardy, and the latter speaks to Will and Krista about nominations, and talks about Bunky even more, and how he changes his personality to fit in with people. The Untouchables comes up once again, and Hardy mentions that he has loyalty to Krista, but not much to Monica, and Krista assumes that they'll be the final three together. Hardy makes it clear that his loyalties are to Nicole and Krista, and wanting them to be at the end, though he says seconds later that in order for him to win, everyone has to lose, meaning that he is lying about wanting to give up his game. Krista reports to Nicole and Hardy that Kent mentions that he has been trying to make a bunch of alliances, and that Monica doesn't carry her weight in the house, and Hardy, as well as most of the house, are turned off by Kent's HOH-itis the previous week, and forming several alliances last week as well. Kent is running out of cigarettes and is hoping people are bartering for cigarettes, where Bunky mentions that he is planning on keeping some for later, so he can barter them for later. Remember this for a later event that happens a few weeks from now. Kent and Bunky know that they are on the outs and that Hardy will probably nominate them, and Kent mentions to Monica that he has her back, and Monica finds it to be suspect. Hardy and Bunky argue about them supposedly talking about what they say about the other, where we know that Hardy wants anyone but Bunky to essentially win, since he's wallpaper who bends in, and Bunky thinks Hardy is the king of the house. We've seen Will and Nicole get closer together, and he teases her for quote-unquote falling in love with him, and it's just a hilarious scene and segment. Nicole has to cheer Hardy up because he's getting depressed since he knows that he's going to get shit after nominations, as Shannon clearly traumatized him from 2 weeks ago, and it's clear he is struggling with starting to become like Chilltown and being cutthroat and knowing that he is going to backstab someone. Bunky and Kent talk about how everyone is fame-hungry and phony, with the exceptions of them, while Hardy is becoming a huge threat to win every other week. Kent mentions that he hopes Will and Monica are nominated. Bunky and Kent notice that Hardy is not giving them eye contact as he starts the nominations, and Hardy has a crying fest as he nominates Will and Kent for eviction, specifically the latter. Kent thinks Hardy is a phony, and Will is not shocked with his nomination. Monica and Krista mention that they know Kent is going home, but he probably thinks that he is staying, and seemingly feels bad for Hardy instead of Kent due to having to nominate him. Bunky asks about the vote, and Hardy tells him that he can vote however he wants, and Nicole tells Bunky to vote with his conscience, as Bunky correctly clocks that Nicole and Hardy clearly had conversations prior, and it's not a coincidence that they both said the exact same thing to him. Nicole reveals to us that the Alliance planned 3 to 4 days prior to the HOH competition, prior to the nominations, that they were always going to nominate Kent and Will, so she tells Kent that she threw the HOH competition. Nicole reports back to Hardy about her promise to Kent, and she wants to throw him a sympathy vote, but Hardy shuts it down since he doesn't want to be the tiebreaker vote, and Kent would target them both if he stayed. Or stays. At this point, there's a lot of tension, where Bunky condescendingly asks Monica and Nicole to tone it down when they are playing outside, and it annoyed them both, since Bunky has done this for about a week now. Nicole tells Hardy about what happened with Bunky's attitude, and they want Bunky out. Krista doesn't care, as she just wants Kent out. Nicole overhears Bunky and Kent trash-talking the other house guests, and Nicole rants outside about him calling them phony about how she saved his ass in the second week, where she was apparently the swing vote to keep him in the house. And they end up laughing about hearing Nicole yell about them. Monica and Krista confront Bunky about his attitude, and Nicole tells him that she does not want to talk to him since she will make him cry, so he better wait a few more days. Nicole then argues with Kent and Bunky about the latter's attitude, and Kent mentions that it was his vote that caused her to stay the first week, which is why Mike gave him hell for a month, and she's breaking her promise on not getting Chilton out of the house, and she says that's her plan eventually. The never-ending fights continue, where Nicole hears Kent bitching to Will about Hardy, Nicole, and Krista. Monica has had enough of the shit-talking and goes on a legendary rant to Krista and Nicole. Things pop off when Kent tells them to not isolate Bunky like they've been isolating him, and Monica, as well as Nicole, doesn't take it well. Monica goes on a legendarily huge rant about how no one's done anything to them, and they need to act like grown-ass people and not like little fucking kids. It's clear the house is getting to all of them by this point. The final fight that happened back to back in this episode happened at the Monday meeting, where Kent calls out Hardy about his double dealing, his act about not wanting to win being bullshit, and how he, Bunky, Monica, and Nicole need to get together to finish Top's goal. Hardy does not like being called out and mentions the deal he offered to make with him and Mike, meaning Kent approached Hardy and Mike with a deal. Kent mentions that Hardy has a bunch of final twos with everyone, and he mentioned that Monica didn't do anything, though in the beginning of the episode it was reported that Kent said this as well. But Kent is not lying about Hardy whatsoever. Will has been enlightened about Kent's campaign, where he also learns from Krista that she had an alliance with Monica and Hardy since day 3, but when he told it to Nicole, he lied and exaggerated the details about them deciding when they play cards on who to evict. Nicole is pissed off since Hardy is her number one, and she confronts Hardy about it, where now he realizes that Krista cannot be trusted, where we get confirmation that Krista tells Will to eliminate Hardy. There's a lot of stuff happening here strategically. Nicole tells Will that Krista needs to go first. Will tells Nicole that Hardy needs to go. Will makes the final 3 with Krista and Monica, where Krista wants him to cut Monica, and Nicole tells Kent that he had some points about Krista, where he laughs at her being America's favorite, when she, meaning Krista, curses all the time like a sailor, but he was the one who saw through her first. Kent and Will's images are talked about, and how much they've changed. Will was obnoxious, and Kent's homophobia rubbed people the wrong way, but people started seeing Kent as a father figure, though people still hated Will. Things changed for Kent in about week 4, which is the Shannon week, and people started warming up to Will within the last 2 weeks, and Nicole admits that Will is her only ally, which definitely does not last long. Kent is evicted in a unanimous 4-0 vote. Kent is someone who I think will always struggle socially no matter what season he is on, though he definitely had his moments where he got along with people, but his personality just rubbed people the wrong way eventually. Strategically, he wasn't awful, as he was the first one who intended on making alliances with people and making deals with people, but he did it too much, especially during his HOH week, where he made a bunch of alliances and everyone kind of figured it out. And he also wanted his group to stay together, as he wasn't willing to adapt. But when he was caught in his duplicitous gameplay, he pulled the everyone is so phony, everyone is being famous, blah 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 blah, how he's too real for the house. It was interesting to learn that Kent ended up quitting cigarettes, though as we know now, he would later die from the complications that his smoking habit has brought him over the years. Rest in peace, Kent, and he definitely added a perspective in the season. Week 6 is definitely not as dramatic as week 5, but it's definitely one of the most emotional weeks of the season, as it has yet another blind side, not necessarily a blind side, but another slit throat move, but seeing how the house reacts to it is really exhilarating. And it's essentially 2 douches going at one another the entire week. So the house guests call Bunky a punk for not voting with his friend, or giving Kent a vote, especially with Krista pushing this, though she did the same thing to Nicole when she voted out Autumn. Nicole ends up winning HOH, and she is struggling with the nominations, since she likes everyone. She does one-on-ones. Hardy mentions that Krista and Bunky are the biggest HOH threats. Krista mentions that Bunky is the biggest threat, mentions voting against Kent yet again, and it's clear that Nicole is frustrated that she is 4th to Krista. Nicole mentions that she and Hardy made a deal to give Krista the win, which is why they did not tell her, but they have to nominate her to boot Monica, and Krista outright calls Nicole a bitch. Monica knew that she was going up because she voted Nicole out in the first week, and she told her that she was never going to vote out Cheryl. Nicole mentions that Monica and Krista are a powerful twosome, but Monica just throws it back in her face that Nicole and Hardy are a powerful twosome. Monica makes it known that a black girl was not going to win the season. Will throws Krista under the bus to Hardy, where he tells him that Krista told him to target Hardy, which obviously pissed Hardy off. Monica and Krista talked about them being nominated, and Monica mentions that everyone wants her to win, and their shit and power is good, so people want to break it up. Monica mentions that it's going to be on if she makes it through the week. Krista and Monica throw some passive aggressiveness to Will, where they mention that it's on, and Krista tells Will to kiss her ass. Clearly, Will knows that Nicole threw him under the bus, since Krista clearly knows that Will sold her out. Hardy speaks to Krista, and she knows that he's been talking about her, so her energy's just off. Hardy and Nicole rant about being played by Krista and how she's bullshitting everyone, where he mentions that he's appreciating her less and worrying about what she would do if she won the money, and based on how she was after the season, he had the correct read on that. He is annoyed that Nicole told her that they and Will made a pact to get her to win when they are planning on sending her home this week. Krista has a mini meltdown to Hardy, where she mentions that she does not want to go back to her hometown and to be disgraced there, and she's losing who she is as a person. Krista snaps at Will because he betrayed her, and he mentions that he told them what they wanted because he needed their votes to stay. Them referring to Nicole and Hardy. Krista has a meltdown, and she mentions that she does not want to go up, and if she does leave, Nicole is next. Nicole and Will talk about their secret pact, and he tells her that Hardy needs to go, despite liking Hardy as a person, and she needs him, since people don't like her either. Hindsight for what ends up happening at the end. Monica sees Krista self-destructing and tries to cheer her up, since Krista is realizing that people that she thought were her friends aren't. Krista and Will have a discussion right before nominations, and Hardy overhears the conversation about them wanting to push her to the finals, and they mention that Hardy and Nicole are liars. There's a house meeting which causes Krista and Hardy to go at it. Since Nicole is mad about the Untouchables, Hardy mentions that he's loyal to Krista until 48 hours ago, and Krista acts like the Untouchables wasn't an alliance where they plot on people. Nicole is very salty since Hardy and Krista are her people, though it seems like she's mainly mad at Krista and Hardy got off in her book. Nicole nominates Krista and Monica for eviction, where Monica lashes out about how she knew she never had a chance to win, so she expected this and felt how Nicole questioned her was a setup. People are annoyed with Monica's attitude, especially because she's acting like she's the target when she isn't the target. Hardy has a conversation with Monica since he thinks she is being ungrateful since she made it further than 6 other people, and Bunky also mentions that it is a cop-out. I understand what she is talking about, and there are definitely some racial elements to it, but they just wouldn't understand. Some of the others, mainly Hardy, mentions that if Monica continues this, she will be going. Monkey kisses up to Nicole some more, and they find it ridiculous that she's packing right after nominations when she isn't the target. Krista and Nicole talk about the Untouchables, and Krista mentions that it is a joke and it was a long time ago, though she throws Hardy under the bus. Will is trying to create a wedge between Nicole and Hardy as he's lying to someone, and even Krista throws him under the bus, but it's clear it isn't going anywhere. Will and Nicole have a conversation about booting Krista and King about making Monica stay, who has already packed. Will mentions that keeping Monica is not good for Nicole since she will nominate her and won't nominate Hardy since she likes him, whereas Krista will nominate Hardy and Bunky, and she likes him, meaning Will and Nicole, but Nicole just doesn't give a shit. They joke about Monica's inability to win HOH. This does not age well, and we get a funny montage of Will and Nicole's love-hate relationship throughout the season. Will and Nicole talk about how Krista is a control freak, and Krista and Monica talking about it on. Nicole mentions that she trusts Will, and Will mentions that he tried to evict her the first week and will try to evict her again. Will and Bunky joke about being in an alliance in front of everyone, and Will mentions that his favorite final twos are with Nicole and Krista, though he doesn't trust either one of them. The house guests talk about how Bunky has lost a lot of weight and gained a decent amount of muscle in the house. Monica and Krista have a talk where Monica approaches Hardy about why the Untouchables fell apart, since it was about positive people getting to the end, and Hardy acts oblivious about what would happen once they got to the final 3, and Monica mentions that she didn't think that far about it. The women talk about Nicole, and presumably Hardy's relationship with her, threw that entire plan off, but Hardy refused to tell them ahead of time, but something before the night of the HOH happened, where we get no context about it. They talk about how Kent was right about Hardy making a bunch of final 2s and 3s with people, where he has a final 2 with Nicole and Monkey, a final 3 with Nicole and Will, and a final 3 with Monica and Krista, which is recent. Hardy's villain edit really starts to increase here, and Kent mentioned in his eviction interview that Hardy started getting hate banners by this point, despite winning America's Favorite the week beforehand. Nicole lectures Hardy about the Untouchables thing and how angry she was at him, and mentions that Krista and Will had this conversation, which is why Will told her about it. Hardy mentions that it didn't matter if he told her or not, and he does a poor way of talking out of it, but he mentions that his final two was always with Nicole. She mentions that they have to win HOH for the next few weeks since they are a target, and they equally agree that Krista needs to go this week. Will wants to give Krista a sympathy vote, but Nicole shuts that down, since she was not allowed to give Kent and Autumn sympathy votes. He also mentions that everyone in the house is evil, but he's the only one who wants to admit it. Nicole mentions that she's the queen of the house, mentions her deal with Bunky, and she tells them that it better be a unanimous vote, where people mention that she has Hardy under her spell, and Will admits that he kind of is as well, as Nicole is seen by everyone as intimidating. Bunky mentions that he's the swing vote, or that is what Monica and Krista think, but he mentions that he is very loyal to Nicole. Bunky breaks down to Krista, which let her know that she's the one that is going home, since he told her that no matter what happens, he's going to buy her mom a tombstone, and that is the main thing Krista would use the winning money on. Hardy and Will are also having a very hard time with voting out Krista as well, and Bunky reports to Nicole that Krista is packing her bathroom stuff, so they know that she knows, and Krista knows that Nicole knows that she knows. Nicole is demanding to people about who told Krista, and no one did, where Will and Hardy throw one another under the bus. Krista has a conversation with Nicole where she tells Krista that Hardy turned when Krista told Will to do what Shannon wanted, which Krista denied, though we saw her telling him this in the episodes, where Monica mentions that people are going to have to repent after the season because the money is dirty. Krista and Monica mention that whomever stays is going to make sure that it's on. We have our first live vote ever, and it's a very emotional vote, where all of them are easily distressed about it as they vote. Krista is evicted in a 3-0 vote, and Krista demands that only Monica and Will are allowed to get up to say bye to her. She tells Nicole that she'll see her at the end, meaning that she's going to vote against Nicole at the end. She tells Will that she's disappointed in him, and we see Will cry, and Monica absolutely breaks down, where Krista ends up having to calm Monica down, or as Krista will cry as well, where Monica mentions that the three of them sold their souls to the devil. Bunky bursts out in tears. Nicole lashes out after the eviction, partially due to the threat. Will feels like a coward, and Hardy is shockingly the calm one, since it was the rational game move. So after watching this season recently, I definitely moved up on Krista as a game player, as she was definitely about self-preservation. She was spreading information across the house however she deemed fit. She tried to play the middle person throughout the season, which is very ideal. But the thing with her is that she kind of got caught up in it, and she would always go back to being the honest, duplicitous person, though she was definitely playing very cutthroat. As a character, I always thought she was on the more boring side in prior rewatches, but I definitely started to see a more cutthroat, sassy side to her, which I definitely appreciate. Krista is kind of the America's Angel who ended up falling off, and having a more sinister side to her shown in many different ways. Week 7 is essentially a filler week because Justin's expulsion caused a screw up in the schedule, so they had to create a filler week where no one went home. Monica and Bunky want to take one another to the end now, especially since those were Krista's parting words. They talk about who they want out first, where she mentions Nicole and he mentions Hardy, but he wants to take Nicole to the final 3 with them, but he can't tell Monica that. Bunky and Will make a deal to go to the final 2 together, especially to get Hardy out. He says that Hardy is shrewd, played a good game, and is always playing the game, and will get to your emotions so you can feel a bond with him, and kiss him on his cheek or stuff like that. So he's trying to use his sexuality. Nicole mentions that she wants to go to the final 4 with the 3 guys since she likes them and doesn't care about Monica at all. Hardy throws Will under the bus to Monica and Bunky since he's tired of him, ridden out his ride, and is still a part of Chilltown, where Monica mentions that she's been pushing that for weeks, but she had no power. Neither Bunky or Monica make any promises to Hardy. Bunky mentions that he voted out Krista and Kent to show loyalty to Hardy and Monica. Nicole and Hardy talk about how Will is trying to create a wedge between them, which he's been doing for a while, and they mention that it's not working at all, which has been clear for a while now. Bunky accepts money to put the house on peanut butter and jelly, but it's a bargain to him, where Hardy caves as well to it. The house is made aware that 2 people took the offer, but Bunky ends up winning the offer, and the house is really pissed off. Hardy admits that he took the offer, and Bunky eventually admits to it as well, where people see that Hardy will do anything to win the money. Bunky tries poisoning Monica against Hardy, and Will tries poisoning Nicole against Hardy as well. Bunky and Hardy win part 1 of the HOH competition, which means that one of the two of them will be the HOH, and will compete for it in the next day. There's a house meeting, and Hardy has the nerve to act like a complete asshole because he's hungry as hell, and pretty much makes a threat to the house where everyone in the house annoys the hell out of him. And it's everyone versus Hardy, essentially. Hardy and Will talk about how Bunky is coming in hot, and how he is becoming a threat. Nicole is not handling the America's favorite well, since she's cancelled her honeymoon and her husband's 40th birthday to be in the house. Hardy ends up winning HOH. Week 8 is definitely juicier since there are a lot of fights that are happening, and it's essentially everyone versus Nicole and Hardy, where the two of them are very buried in the edit, and it's kind of just the pride before the eventual fall. Bunky knows that he is going to be nominated, especially since he has went on a comp spree so far. Will also knows that he is going to be nominated, since he was nominated on Hardy's other HOHs. Nicole and Hardy know that they just need to win the final 4 HOH, and Hardy is hoping that this HOH is a lot less volatile than his other HOHs. Both Will and Hardy have their hair changed, as Will cuts his hair short and Hardy dyes his hair black from brown. Nicole tells Will that Bunky is their target this week, though it's going to be very difficult to do. Will is hoping that Nicole can get Hardy to not nominate him, and she tells him that she can't get Hardy to do anything. Hardy talks to Nicole, and they both agree that the others would be stupid to not nominate the both of them if they have the power, and they cannot have Bunky and Monica make it to the end. Tensions between Hardy and Bunky grows exponentially by this point, and Bunky mentions that Hardy is disrespectful and doesn't even realize it. Bunky is having to deal with the fact that he's getting nominated, and we see things blow up between Hardy and Bunky due to Hardy pathetically bartering for cigarettes, and Bunky wants protein bars in return. Hardy mentions that it's a sensitive time in the Big Brother house, and Bunky outright states that he's going to be nominated, but he rejects the deal. Will mentions that Bunky's deal was dumb, and it's not smart to do before nominations, but many people are noticing and like that Bunky is standing up for himself. Nicole wants Monica to be nominated and sent home, but Hardy is not here for nominating her whatsoever. Nicole mentions that he is seeing things strategically, and she is still trying to think about loyalty. Will kisses Hardy's butt with his humor since the HOH has happened, and while Will knows that it won't help him in the nominations, it might help him with the eviction. They make a deal with Will about if he wins the final 4 HOH that he won't nominate both Hardy and Nicole, which Will agrees with, though he has no intentions of keeping. Hardy nominates Bunky and Will for eviction. Bunky threatens to taint the jury against Hardy. People are talking about Hardy's hair being dyed, his eyes getting dark, and his drinking as well as smoking more. It is clear that everyone else is planning on targeting Nicole and Hardy, and Bunky notices that Hardy cried when he nominated Kent, but wasn't given that when Hardy nominated him. Bunky asks Nicole to let him know if it's his last week, and she does not tell him the truth. In the same conversation, he notices that Nicole has been twisting her words to get out of her promise to him. Bunky continues to rant about how it's better not to be the bully, i.e. Hardy, and the bitch, i.e. Nicole, at the end, but they have the last vote, and Hardy overhears the conversation with Bunky and Will. Nicole gets really annoyed with Will after he makes fun of her with that doll prize that they are doing, or that doll challenge, and she mentions to Hardy that he feels too safe. Nicole talks to Monica about the Untouchables thing, where she found out a few days before the HOH, and Monica mentions that they are totally wrong about that, and Nicole mentions that she should have went to the source, though Monica talks in the diary room about Nicole being mad that she was played like a sucker by Will. Nicole continues to rant about Will as he and Bunky went on their helicopter ride, and Hardy asks her how would she feel about just being in a house with Monica and Bunky next week. She mentions to Hardy that she feels gypped about how Will twisted the Untouchables thing, and that's where it all comes from. Will asks Hardy why Nicole won't speak to him, and Hardy mentions that Will metaphorically continues to stomp on her foot and apologizes, but does the same thing over and over again. Bunky mentions that he initially thought Hardy was gay, or has an 80-20% attraction, or ratio attraction, to women, though Bunky will call Hardy gay for the rest of the week in frustration, and Chilton made a lot of homophobic comments about Hardy throughout the season. And Bunky mentions that Will and Hardy have feminine qualities, like dyeing their hair, plucking their eyebrows, shaving their hair, and doing facials, mentioning that they're just stereotypes. We have more tension with Hardy and Bunky, where Bunky talks about how Hardy has always had a temper, but tried to hide it in the first few weeks, and would stomp around angrily before he blew up, while Bunky is passive. Bunky and Will trash Nicole and Hardy for being miserable grumps whose voices never change when they are happy or angry, and how they lack inflection in their voices, and how Nicole has been the most miserable person in the house. Nicole and Will finally have their talk, and she mentions that she's often pissed off because of him, and Will gives the same dry, insincere apology after not speaking for 2 days. We see more tension and fights with Hardy and Bunky, where Hardy does not understand where the hostility is coming from, and we see more tension and fights with Will and Nicole as well. The other three are just bashing them about how horrible Hardy and Nicole are, how they are bullies, and how it is weird that Nicole calls him honey. They call out the hypocrisies of the two of them, and it's done in a montage. Bunky makes a pitch to Hardy and Nicole that he will send Monica home next week if he wins, which is a lie, and we know that Will does the same thing. I don't know why people make such a big deal about the final five, where both Bunky and Will made the same pitch and had the same intentions of cutting Nicole and Hardy. We get a segment about how Hardy's perception in the house changed, where we see Bunky, Monica, and even Will talk about how much they like and respect him earlier on, but that changed as he became more two-faced. They showed him bashing more house guests, and he now conveniently is playing for himself, despite his earlier sentiments. Will and Nicole talk about how he said he would give up the game for Nicole and Krista to be in the final two, but he evicted Krista and is letting the game change him. We do see a scene where he and Nicole are talking in the night about how they are becoming like them, meaning Chilltown, because they are being cutthroat and manipulative. They say that the black hair is fitting, since he's becoming more of an evil, bully, and an aggressive person. Monica votes to evict Will, and Nicole votes to evict Bunky, which means that Hardy has to break the tiebreaker vote, and he of course votes to evict Bunky. It's an emotional eviction, but still not as emotional as some of the prior and future evictions in the season, as everyone but Will ends up crying. Bunky I definitely found annoying at some point in the season, but he's definitely a lot more likable, and I liked how they didn't make him being gay a personality trait, which unfortunately tends to happen a lot in future Big Brother seasons, and I liked his arc about having to learn how to speak up for himself, losing weight, and not letting people punk him. As a player, I don't really know what I feel about him, as he kind of just kissed butt to whomever was in power and lacked conviction to vote how he wanted to vote. But Bunky definitely offered a lot to the season, and was one of the last likable people in the house, though he got sanctimonious at times, which was very annoying. Week 9 is definitely a great week, because you see people finally get their comeuppance, and you see people finally have to take accountability of their actions, and the big powers are finally stopped, and it's just really refreshing to watch people who are underestimated take control of the game and their own fate. A banner ends up flying over the house where it reads about Nicole doing something inappropriate with Will in the hot tub, which distracted her, in addition to Will consistently moving during the HOH comp, and she ends up accidentally letting go of her hand during the HOH comp. The tea is, they are talking about the night before Bunky's evictions, and I read a transcript of what was reported about on the live feed, and mind-blowing! Anyone who has access to read it, definitely read it. Apparently, all 5 of them were naked, flirting, and groping with one another, and it's just a mess. Anyways, Nicole has a meltdown, and she thinks her marriage is in jeopardy. Monica is determined to never let go and wants to right some wrongs, where Krista's eviction ended up changing things for her. Nicole and Hardy know that they are screwed, and it becomes even more apparent once Will throws the HOH competition to Monica. Will talks about how he has been throwing the competitions, and he and Monica are doing poorly in competitions is why they made it far, whereas Boogie and Shannon got second in the HOH competitions that ultimately sent them home. Nicole and Hardy are really pissed off, especially since Will gave for a large peanut butter jar. They mention that the other one needs to get Will, whoever stays, and Hardy is regretting keeping Will after only a few hours from Bunky's eviction. Will explains his rationale, where he mentions that Nicole and Hardy are going to take one another over him, and Nicole BS's him about her and Will being just as close as she and Hardy is. Nicole and Will go back and forth a few times. He gives some insincere apologies where they argue in bed, outside, and doing that all over again. He mentions again that he threw competitions at the expense of his friends, which we all know is BS from what I've stated earlier in this video. Nicole and Hardy are trying to be happy for Monica winning HOH, and she mentions that she doesn't have a relationship with Monica like he does. Nicole continues to melt down about her marriage potentially crumbling, and Hardy is comforting her throughout it all. We see Nicole throwing things and melting down in the diary room, where Hardy tells her that she needs to talk to someone, where it seems like she's considering to go home. Monica nominates Nicole and Hardy for eviction, which everyone expected, and the two are seemingly taking their nominations pretty well. Nicole rants about Will being a satanic asshole. Hardy rants about Will seeing him in the street someday, and Will rewrites history about throwing competitions since day one. Nicole talks to her husband through the cameras, and Will consoles Nicole because he needs her for his strategy, and he doesn't want her to leave voluntarily, since it takes away his agency and power. Someone sends a banner to tell her to torture Will, which lightens her mood a bit. We see a few of the survivors from the first two seasons move into the house for the weekend, essentially, and it was a nice moment seeing the cast members from two shows interact, though they waste too much time on it. The Monday meeting is different, since it involves a Survivor House guest, and we have the two nominees break down in tears, since the reality of them being split apart sets in, and them having to take accountability for their behavior throughout the season. Hardy talks about how Will would be a fool to keep him, and how he might want to go actually, and Will talks about maybe wanting to change things up with keeping Hardy, who thinks he is going, and booting Nicole, who thinks she is staying, for the hell of it. Monica talks about how good it felt to humble Nicole and Hardy, and to remind them that they are human just like everyone else, and the two nominees promise to not campaign, though they both want to stay. Nicole and Hardy start bantering about her screwing it up, and he tells her to stop thinking like that. Will wants Nicole to stab Hardy in the back by basically admitting that she wants to win, and he mentions that he promised Shannon to take out Hardy. It's refreshing to see Hardy and Nicole subtly campaigning and not giving up, which many people did in this season. Just giving up, which sucked to watch. Will mentions that Nicole is pissing him off lately and would want to evict her due to that, whereas Hardy is being nice and is generally having fun with Will. We get a few segments back to back. The first one is about Monica's journey in the house and how she mastered the under-the-radar strategy. Everyone mentioned how strong-willed she is, and Monica talks about sitting back, observing, and not talking too much, which worked, since the more outgoing and loud personalities went out earlier. She talks about how Krista's eviction was a wake-up call, since she knew that people kept her around because she was weak. We get another segment about Hardy and Nicole's relationship throughout the season, where they got close over the first few days after not thinking highly about one another for the first night, where they got to know one another, strategized, and played around with one another like brother and sister. Nicole and Hardy talk about how much of a force they were in the season, and Will mentions that he doesn't think their friendship is genuine, since neither will give up for the other, which I personally find refreshing. Will votes to evict Hardy, and he has an emotional goodbye with Nicole. Hardy is always a character I enjoyed watching this season, especially since he wasn't just the pretty boy or the meathead. There's definitely a lot of depth towards him, and seeing him go through these complex emotions with wanting to play the game but wanting to be the person he was raised to be, and seeing him have to learn the game on his own and to pick up on it and to adapt quicker than the other house guests was interesting to watch, and he was very much a drama magnet, but I really liked seeing him get tumbled. Watching him in this rewatch, I realized that his game ages pretty well, and he would probably do well on other seasons with the strategy, and he would benefit a lot more without the veto. Overall, the season is vastly different without Hardy, and I appreciate him for what he contributed to the season and to Big Brother overall. Things definitely start to slow down from this point onwards, as it's at the end game, and in the earlier seasons, they really dragged out to the end game, so we got more episodes on it. Though there's still some few key moments in this week. Will is annoyed that Nicole and Hardy did not use the final speeches to campaign to him, and Nicole thought that Will was going to evict her, since the way he positioned his body during his eviction speech, and avoiding her beforehand. Will wins part 1 of the final HOH competition, and he tells Nicole that if they're in part 3 of the final HOH, it will be stressful since they know they will take one another. Nicole and Monica talk about how they cannot let Will win the final HOH, and they talk about how Will threw every single competition, which Monica didn't know about, as Nicole wants Monica to think that she will evict him. Monica thought it was odd that the conversation took place, since Nicole knows that Monica never co-signs anything and just says, and never outright agrees with anything. Will complains about how unfun of a person Nicole is, and Monica knew that Nicole's miserable self would come back after having a lighter few days. We have Nicole and Monica talk about Nicole mentioning that she, as in Nicole, looks like a light-skinned black person. Monica mentions that you don't use light-skinned and black person in the same sentence, since people generally say light-skinned for a black person. Nicole defends herself, saying that people say light-skinned and fair-skinned for white people, and it's just hilarious to see how Nicole doesn't understand where Monica is coming from, but it's clear to me that Monica, or what Monica is referring to. They then argue about whether Monica insinuated that Nicole was being politically incorrect or not, and it's hilarious seeing how Will wanted absolutely no part of the conversation and knew that it was not one that he should take part in or wanted any smoke from. They talk about how it is weird that there's only 3 people in the house since there are a lot of alone time now, and there's just a lot of space, so they tend to group together when they can. Monica misses the social action, Will likes being by himself, and Nicole really misses Hardy. Nicole talks about how she is scared to leave the house due to her marriage and how people perceive her. Monica is out of the running in the final HOH, where Nicole wins part 2, but she realizes that Will wants her to be the bad person to evict Monica. The final 3 are told about the September 11 attacks at the World Trade Center, and Monica is told that her cousin is not found and are waiting to hear from her, as her family is waiting to hear from her. Seeing how all 3 of them handle the matter is so real, and it was a nice moment seeing the 3 of them being there for one another, and it caused a delay not only in the production, but in the broadcast, as the week was pushed back 2 days, and they didn't air the episodes for like several days afterwards, and there's debate about whether they should even complete the season. Apparently they knew something was up, since there was nothing in the sky all day and it was notably quiet. You would eventually learn that her cousin passed away during the attacks, and my condolences go out to everyone affected 9/11 and all the lives lost from it. Most of the episode is spent on catching up on the other 8 house guests, but from the final 3, Nicole ends up beating Will in the final HOH competition, though she mentioned that she's going to throw it, though they both agree to try it in the HOH, and evicts Monica, who gives Nicole a piece of her mind and a nice read, and definitely takes her shot and digs at Nicole as she makes her way out. Monica was definitely a refreshing person to watch in the house, as she came in being by herself, but she knew that she had to tone down her personality to be under the radar, or else she would have been evicted very early on. She was very observant, and while she didn't overtly game, she saw people for what they were from the beginning and just kind of let themselves take one another out. Overall, I liked Monica for being such a sincere person, but she also had her tough moments, and we did get some complexity out of her. She's definitely someone who is a unique house guest, and I like what she brought to the show, as many of the other house guests lost their way during this cutthroat game, and Monica never did. So in the older seasons, we know that the final 2 was literally a week, and they didn't cramp the final 3 or the final 4 at times in 1 week, so it's just the standard final 2 here. Nicole claims that she never lied in the house, and Will claims that he threw competitions from the very beginning, as they explain how they got to the final 2 in the diary rooms. We have the jury deliberations start, where Shoa asks why they should win, where Nicole mentions that she did her best to try to treat people well, work hard, and be nice and truthful as possible, compared to him, where Will answers that he came in the house to lie and mix it up, which he did. Adam asks what qualifies them to judge people, and Will mentions that his life experience is why he is so judgmental, and she asks Nicole who she was loyal to, which she said that she was as loyal to Adam as she can be, and she was definitely loyal to Bunky and Hardy. Shannon asks Nicole if she was as evil as Chilltown, and Nicole doesn't see herself as evil, and Shannon asks Will where he sees himself in 6 months, and he says hoping to paint their master bedroom together. Mike asks Will if he would finance the boy band's music video if he won, and Will says yes. Mike asks Nicole about the recipe she made in the house, which tells him that she'll have to show him, so he's just giving them softball questions that don't really mean much of anything, but to lighten the mood. Kent asks Nicole if she was ashamed of any of her choices, and she mentions throwing the HOH so she didn't have to nominate him, and he asks Will why he thought that Kent was the only one who saw what was happening, and Will mentioned that he knew that Kent knew that most of the house wanted him to make it to the end. Krista asks Will about throwing the HOH competitions that caused herself, Shannon, and Bunky to go home, and he mentions that he came up with his plan before entering the house, which I think is BS, and Krista asks Nicole if she believes in God, which, what type of question is that? and Nicole responds that she believes in a higher spirit. Bunky asks Nicole about her plans between herself and Hardy at the end, and he asks her why she would deserve to win over Hardy, and she mentions that her hopes and dreams went down when Bunky and Hardy were evicted, and she starts crying, mentioning that she felt like she would have won if Hardy was beside her and if he won. Bunky asks Will the amount of money that he would give to charities, and Will says none. Hardy asks Will why he should give Will his vote over Nicole, and Will blatantly says that he shouldn't and he wouldn't. Hardy asks Nicole about her telling Will what Shannon would want him to do, causing that to influence Will into voting out Hardy, and Nicole is very shocked about this and said that Hardy should be the person who should stay, which Will said it wasn't in his plan, and she reported everything back to Hardy. She was really shocked by this, but Hardy was pretty much lying, so Will wouldn't nullify his vote as a guaranteed Nicole vote. Monica asks Nicole about Jeff sending her the banner, where Nicole mentions that it said to stay there to torment Will, and Nicole mentions the promise she made to her husband about taking the person she could beat, and Monica asks Will why he called her stupid, which Will mentions that he doesn't believe that. Nicole talks about how she came in to be herself, but the first week blew that up. She made some poor decisions and tried to play the game as honestly as she could. She made some mistakes and is human, and it's so clear that she was beaten down by this point, as she says she just wants to go home to her husband. Will says that apologizing would be ingenuine and that isn't who he is, and the people not happy with how the season went down should blame themselves, and if they're not happy with reality TV, then they aren't happy with reality. Nicole nullifies Shannon's vote, and Will nullifies Bunky's vote due to him being annoyed with Bunky's attitude, where Will wins in a 5-2 vote, and it would have been 6-3 without the nullified votes. Nicole was such an enigma to watch this season, seeing her journey of struggling socially, which caused her to be on the out in the first week, and then her making those relationships and strategizing really hard to make it through that week and to be in a power alliance, which is really great to watch. And then she and Hardy would pretty much form a coup d'etat and run the rest of the season. Nicole definitely was miserable a lot of her time in the house, and I definitely did feel bad for her, but I found her to be a very likable, engaging, and compelling character, and she really was a lot of the heart of the season, in my opinion. Definitely a standout character, and definitely deserves more credit than she is given. So, rewatching the season, I knew that Will's early game was bad, obviously, but I forgot how really bad it was, and it honestly seemed like he would have went home had Shannon not pretty much threw herself under the bus for him. And he really was awful socially. But it became noticeable almost immediately after she left that he was starting to get better and he was improving. And he definitely learned the game as he went along, and he knew that using the diary room to his advantage for the jury, which was the format at the time, was imperative. He definitely became more likable as the season went on. He was definitely more self-aware than a lot of the others, and he was just having fun. And it's always great watching someone have fun on shows like these. Even though the production value and the music has not aged well, and there are definitely a lot more twists in future seasons, it is so clear why the season holds up so well and why it essentially started Big Brother USA as we knew it. It had the smallest cast, tied with Big Brother 3, but you got to know them the most, and it's one of the strongest casts ever. Not only from a personality point of view, but from a drama point of view as well, and a lot of them picked up on strategy in their own ways very quickly. I definitely enjoyed this season just as much as I did the other times I've watched the season. I'm definitely looking forward to going through Big Brother US now. Like I did with Big Brother Canada, I'm going to rank the cast based off of gameplay and the tiers that I've established with past gameplay tiers rankings, and then I'll move on to the next season. Thank you all for supporting, and I'll be back soon. Bye!